From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Betsy Peterson, the director of the American Folklife Center here in the Library of Congress. And on behalf of the staff, I want to welcome you today to this very special event, a lecture by Chicago area ethnomusicologist Juan Díes, focusing on Corridos, the story of a Mexican ballad tradition about outlaws and heroes. The Corrido tradition is very vital and very alive, and is perhaps even more alive than it was 150 years ago. But this tradition is about tragic story songs, focusing on outlaws, heroes, events of the day, commenting and talking about them. The first Corrido recordings that we have in the American Folklife Center, and we have a fairly significant collection, was collected by John Lomax in San Antonio in 1934. But the timing of today's lecture and workshop and tomorrow's concert is no accident. Not only is September National Hispanic Heritage Month, beginning, I guess, today, but our concert by Juan and his band Sones de Mexico takes place on September 16th, which is Mexican Independence Day. So we're thrilled about all of this. A few small logistical concerns before we proceed first. As with all of our events, we will be taping today's lecture. It becomes part of our archive, and it also will make its way onto our website as a webcast, so we can share this with people throughout the world and for generations to come. So with that caveat, I would ask you to turn off any electronic devices you may have at the moment. We're also, I just wanted to let you know, we will be doing the lecture and then we'll be taking a small break. And then I know some of you will be coming back. We are doing a Corrido writing workshop, which is filled to capacity. We were asking for people to sign up, and we're very excited about it. If you are not in on that, you will actually be able to hear the results of that songwriting workshop either later this evening or tomorrow. For this workshop today, the new poet laureate Juan Felipe Herrera from California is going to be joining folks at the songwriting workshop and participating in the creation of the Corrido. He will recite that, or perhaps even perform it along with Juan this evening. And then tomorrow, the whole band will be performing the Corrido. So please come to either event. We're very excited about it. And we're also really excited about the Poet Laureate's interest and participation in all of this. He visited the American Folklife Center last week and spent an afternoon looking at some of our collections, and we're really thankful for his support. I also want to thank the Poetry and Literature Center here at the library, and I also want to thank our co-sponsor, the Hispanic Cultural Society. We really appreciate your support. I also want to just take a moment to thank some of the staff at the American Folklife Center. It always takes several people to make these things happen, and this event has been no different. I would especially like to thank Jennifer Cutting, Thea Austin, Stephanie Hall, and Steve Winnick for all the hard work that they did on this event. Thank you. And now, to introduce our speaker. Juan Díes was raised in San Luis Potosi, Mexico, where he first developed a passion for music and learned to play the guitar beginning at the age of 6. At age 18, he migrated to the US and explored a range of different musical styles: jazz, folk, reggae, rock. He majored in music and anthropology at Earlham College and received an MA in folklore and ethnomusicology from Indiana University. He taught and studied music in Mexico, Spain, and Kenya, and served as director of community programs at Chicago's Old Town School of Folk Music. He then co-founded Sones de Mexico with Victor Pichardo in 1994, and he has served on the governing boards of the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences and Folk Alliance International. He's also done his own independent fieldwork research for the Smithsonian, for the National Endowment for the Arts, the Montgomery County Arts Council, and the Lowell Folk Festival. So he's well-traveled. So with all of that said, let me please introduce Juan Díes, and please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. I'll keep the microphone. I can keep the mic. Yes. Yes, we might need it. Yes. Well, thank you. And I have to say, corridos has always been one of my passions. You heard that I started playing guitar at the age of 6, and one of the first songs I played was a corrido. Corridos are very much fun. They are songs that tell a story, and usually a tragic story, and they're engaging even for a child. Some of my students now are children, and I teach children how to write stories about tragedies going on in their own lives. Maybe they lost their lunch money, or they lost their pet turtle, or anything can be turned into a corrido. And it's a wonderful tradition. It was years later, when I was studying at Indiana University under John McDowell, that he introduced me to an academic study of corridos. And we visited the corrido as a form of literature. And there was a revelation to me to take this very mundane folk song and all of a sudden use tools, very sophisticated tools, to investigate what was going on in the corrido, poetically, socially, anthropologically, musicologically, very, very interesting. So when I moved to Chicago, I started an outreach program teaching corridos in the schools, and we'll get to see a little bit of that. But let's get into our subject matter here. Well, one small commercial before I get on with this. I want to acknowledge the National Endowment for the Arts. They have funded a program for us this year to teach corridos around the country. So this year I've been to the Adirondacks. I'm going to Los Angeles. I've been in the Midwest and several places, bringing this very lecture and workshops that I'm doing here today. I also want to acknowledge my bandmates who are here. Sagbe Pichardo, who just walked out, our harp player. Lorena Iñiguez and Juan Rivera, they're back there. Eric Hines. And Gonzalo Cordova, who's parking our van. He's trying to find parking in Washington, D.C. He's a true hero. So let's, I'm sure we all want to know, what is a corrido, right? We came here. Maybe some of you know already. How can I make one? Right? We'll be addressing that this afternoon in a workshop. There'll be about 20 people who will sit and write an original corrido. And then what is it used for? What can we use corridos for? And this comes to the applied part of my work about bringing this to schools, using it for literacy programs, using it for conflict resolution, using it for peacemaking, you know. But let's begin. I think the primary focus today, this hour that we'll spend together, will be about what is a corrido. So let me test your knowledge. That's why I wanted to keep this microphone. About corridos. What is a corrido? What do you know about corridos? Anybody? How about you? What do you think is a corrido? No idea. Okay. Yes.
A corrido is a story.
Okay. Yes.
That tells something about a character.
It is a narrative type of story, right? Okay. Anybody who heard of corridos before? What kind of story? Any story?
Well, see, I would say that it's a song that tells a story.
Okay, so it's a story in song. Yeah, yeah, that helps. Yes.
And then it's usually a story in a song about a character, usually some kind of hero. And sometimes that hero can be like an anti-hero. Like
Yes. Definitely, hero is a big issue on corridos. A person is heroic in some manner, anti-hero.
I had this impression, I'm not sure this
Yeah.
is right, that it had to do with like the border. I don't know if that's true.
Border, yeah.
'Cause
There's a lot of tragedy going on in the border, so it's a tragic story too. I might add, yes. But they're not exclusively from the border, but yes.
My impression was that they were also they emerged in the rural areas of Mexico.
Yes, I would say yes. The emerges. The corridos have a long history, migrating from the countryside to urban areas, from illiterate composition to literary compositions of corridos. So, yeah.
But everything you said so far could be applied to música ranchera. What's the difference?
Música ranchera. Well, there's a narrative element. The rancheras don't always. There's something that is just unrequited love or lament. They're just, I'm so lonely, I want to cry. No, the corrido is actually, okay, so that's good. Okay, what country do corridos come from? There.
Well, earlier I wanted to mention that they have a long, long history, or at least their root of corridos.
Yes.
They come from medieval. This is why I understand that they come from medieval times in Spain.
Good.
Juglares,
Yes, we're going to get to that, absolutely. It's part of a long tradition of, as old as humanity, I would say. How old is this tradition? Yeah, you anticipated that. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see, some people talk about 150 years for corridos, but it definitely has some forms that predated the corrido. So, do corridos narrate fictional stories? Anybody know? Corrido about Mickey Mouse or Superman or true stories. Yeah, that is an important element. At least the intent of the corrido is that they be factual, and they do a lot of effort through the song to reinforce the factual basis of the song by citing dates, naming people, very specific things. How long can a corrido song last? Maybe someone from the Library of Congress buying enough tape. So yes, they could, we've all heard of music being shortened by the recording industry, and especially when recordings could only fit 3 minutes to a side. Artists had to conform to that. If they wanted their music recorded, they had to shorten their compositions to 3 minutes or 4 minutes. And that certainly happened to corridos. Some old corrido singers could brag about, show off their memory and sing a 20-minute long song with all details about the story. And it is a point of pride being able to remember all the verses. Is the main character always the victim of the story in tragic corridos? We're getting a little more technical here. The main character always the victim. When you hear the song about the corrido de Benjamín Argumedo, corrido de Valente Quintero, that character is usually dead or dies in the corrido. So you don't want to have a corrido written about you. The main character is typically the victim. Is it common for the main character in a corrido to act in a heroic manner? That goes back to what you were saying back there. Yes, it's all about that. The most exciting part of the corrido is the lead character showing his or her bravery in the face of danger. Usually in some act against a force bigger than themselves, an enemy, a general, someone who outranks them, possibly the government. That's why the outlaw part comes out, you know, in there. How many narrative sections are there ideally in the development of corrido? Well, this is more related to what we're going to be studying later in the day, but I've touched about 8 different ones that take us through the narrative of the corrido. There's usually an introduction of characters. There is a warning. Our hero is warned before anything would happen to them. Then that person defies the warning, and that's where they show their valor, their courage. Then they are fell victim to that defiance. They're killed, and then there comes the moral of the story. Had they listened to the warning, nothing of this would have happened. Some moral, and then a wrap-up. The most common rhyme scheme in corridos is an 8-syllable stanza. This poetic form goes back to the 16th century in Spanish poetry, and it's very common, you know, throughout folk music in Latin America. It's not exclusively 8-syllable. There's corridos with different lengths, but it is a very common one. And the rhyme scheme, I'm sorry, the rhyme scheme is AB, ABCB, or ABCB, DB. Very simple. And poetic meter, 8 syllables. Okay, extra point. Maybe somebody can answer this. What animal typically appears in the farewell section of many corridos? Olivia, may you know this one? What animal? A dove. Caballo. No, I think it's there's corridos about caballos, there's corridos about perros, there's corridos about gallos, but at the end, the animal that takes the story away is a vuela, vuela, palomita. Very good, very good. Okay, so let's listen to a corrido. I got a special request from the library to play for you a corrido from the collection. This was collected for the Library of Congress by John Lomax in Bronzeville, Texas in 1939. Now, corridos are part of this Hispanic tradition, a Mexican tradition. They evolve, they're entertaining, people share them at home, but how do we get them recorded? All of a sudden begin to be researchers, music hunters that go out there and equipped with this new technology of recording equipment, and they bring it out to Bronzeville, Texas, and they begin to ask around who sings corridos or who sings ballads, who are the best players around, and try to get them on record. And of course, they're brought to the Cathedral of Collections here in the Capitol, in the Library of Congress, where they are stored and classified and numbers are assigned to them. So this is where we find this corrido. So this is, now it's available online under the name of La Batalla del Ojo del Agua, del Ojo de Agua. It's a corrido, the corrido is actually called Corrido de José Mosqueda, so it's miscatalogued. He sang another song under the other title and the same session, but it was miswritten. So it's about a ballad about the derailment and robbery of an American train by a band of Mexican sediciosos led by José Mosqueda. So this is, again, the border conflicts. You know, somebody brought it up here that it seems that a lot of corridos are, well, there's a lot of conflict in the border. And ever since the expansion of the U.S. over those states and families being displaced, the sediciosos were a counter movement trying to cause havoc in all those territories. So this is definitely a point of pride. The ballad was sung by José Suárez, a blind Cuban guitarrero and celebrated singer of border ballads. So John Lomax came to Bronzeville and said, who sings corridos? He said, well, we know this great Cuban guy, so bring him over. Let's get him recorded, right? So he is a good singer. So it was collected by John and Ruby T. Lomax in 1939 at the home of J.K. Wells in Bronzeville, Texas. So J.K. Wells is another singer. I think he has some songs in the collection as well, some English ballads. This recording is found in the Library of Congress under that catalog number, 2609A1, under the title Batalla del Ojo de Agua, apparently being confused with another ballad collected by Jose Mosqueda during the same session. So, and this era was pointed out by Américo Paredes in the 1950s, and it still remains in the collection. Okay, so let's listen. Here we go.
Americano, estaba José Mosqueda con la pistola en la mano. Tumbamos del ferrocarril en terreno americano.
Okay. Here we go.
El 19 de enero que el pueblo se alborotó, cuando fue el primer asalto que José Mosqueda dio. Gritaba José Mosqueda con la pistola en la mano, tumbamos el ferrocarril en terreno americano. Estaba José Mosqueda con la pistola en la mano.
Oh, he repeats it.
Tumbamos el ferrocarril en terreno americano. Decían los americanos que mexicanos tan crueles dejaron el ferrocarril bailando fuera de los rieles. En el rancho de La Lata y donde se vio lo bonito, a donde hicieron correr al señor Santiago.
De los hoyos tan fuerte mientras lloraba.
Sorry about that.
El 19 de enero.
Okay. Well, technical difficulties here, but let me point out the factual basis where it is very characteristic of corridos to begin with a headline, a date of where it happened, and also it tells you exactly what this whole story is about, a robbery by Jose Mosqueda.
Do we know what year?
It doesn't say, you know, corridos typically would say something like that, but in this one,
When was Jose Mosqueda kind of robbing trains? Approximately.
I have no idea. I only know, there may be a recorded, I haven't done the research on this particular corrido, but he might be recorded in other historical records of sorts. So here he's flaunting his, waving the pistol in his hand. We jumped the train on American soil. You know, it is sort of a heroic defiance. And the Americans, were portrayed as, cowardly and afraid, are saying, these Mexicans are so cruel. They left the train wobbling out of its tracks. Oh my God. And then he mentions, I don't know the specifics again with these characters, Santiago Brito. Then he mentions Representative Justino, who are also, cowardly running away. The corrido is putting into evidence like some cowardly acts by other people. Corrido singers have gotten killed over things they have said in their corridos. This is very real and continues to be to the present day. You can Google some story of a corrido singer being shot or killed, and you'll find a story in the last 2 years of somebody being killed over a song. So Jose Mosqueda said, standing on that broken hill, "Don't worry, my friends, here comes another train. Yeah, we'll get another one." They're defiant. Simón Garcia, another one of his associates was not caught, and he went to spend money from Esteban Salas. Also, he was caught, and he apparently, from what the Corrido says, he created the iron that they used to lift the tracks off the. So he was sentenced to 2 years in prison for that. So, and then there's a characteristic closing, very typical of corridos, where there's a farewell formula. Let me see. Oops. A lot of RF. And here I bid my farewell as I walk out on the trail. The man who derailed the train was named Jose Mosqueda. May we always remember his name. Let it be recorded. Yes? 1891? Oh, good. You found it. Oh, great. Like, okay. Very good. So, 1891? Yes, okay. Mosqueda, I now take my leave, but my friends will stay here. The man who derailed the train was Jose Mosqueda. Many times I describe, corridos have been called a newspaper of the people. At a time when 70% of people in Mexico could not read or write, apparently they were getting their stories from corridos. But this view has been challenged because corridos continue to be sung and they're no longer news. You're singing songs from 100 years ago and you're still listening with. So it's not about the news anymore. It's really, it's a hero tale. It's a statue built for a person so that they may always be remembered for their courage and their defiance. So what is a corrido? A corrido is a song. It's a Mexican song. We don't see corridos, well, nowadays people make corridos in Colombia and other countries, but it is something that evolved in Mexico. The corrido narrates a tragic or heroic event in the life of a real person. Corridos are performed in a manner that is non-emotional. There'll be jokes sometimes in the corrido about something horrible that happened to someone, but the corrido is very detached, and sometimes it works some humor into it. So it's a very journalistic style, based on facts, sometimes with humors. The corrido follow a series of poetic rules. They have the ABCB rhyme, octosyllabic meter. They have a tragic theme. Examples, crimes of passion. Someone getting killed over a girl being killed at a dance for refusing to dance with a man. An act of treason, confrontation against authority. A lot of corridos about this. Among rivals, people who used to be friends before, and then they, over a woman or over a drug deal or something that found them becoming rivals. During a war, the times when the most corridos are written during the Mexican Revolution, now with the drug wars, they're flourishing times for corridos. Among politicians or in the drug trade. Natural disasters, there's a few corridos about hurricanes, earthquakes, commemorative, self-aggrandizing. Now we see people with a lot of money commissioning corridos to be written about them, and with happy endings. They're really ruining the whole thing. But they're really playing on the heroic part of the corrido. Corridos about animals, you mentioned horses. Yes, horses, roosters, dogs, etc. The music style doesn't define corridos. So you hear people saying, play something to the rhythm of corrido or in a corrido. The corridos can happen in many musical styles. We see them, the accompaniment can vary according to the regional Mexican style, the region where they come from. So we can see them as banda, we can see them as norteño, with a solo guitar and harp, or just sung a cappella. So this whole definition can be dismissed entirely because in reality, we do not have a national board that regulates what a corrido is. Corridos are written and people call their compositions corridos and they put them out there and they challenge the definition. The people who are belaboring over this definition are us, the scholars who are coming and trying to create a definition for corridos. So the minute you say that corridos have to be tragic, someone comes up with a corrido that isn't tragic. When you say that they have to be, one other characteristic of a corrido is that it doesn't have a chorus. A corrido means all the way through. They're sung one verse after another, after another, after another, and there's no chorus. Of course, someone will come and will make a corrido with a chorus. And let's take a look at some of the origins of the corridos. And this takes us back to the very beginnings of humanity. The Iliad. Some will say that Homer would not write the Iliad out of his own imagination, but he was actually a collector of verses that were being recited or sung about the Trojan Wars. And he wrote a compendium of a very long sequence of stories of these wars. And so here's an original Greek portrayal. Notice that there is a graphic that accompanies the text. When we visit the corridos, we're going to see broadsides where we see the same usage of images and texts being used together. Many times, in a population that is with a high illiteracy rate, people like to see images and they like to hear the songs, and that's how the oral history gets passed on, even when it begins to be written by people like Homer. Here's another piece of the text. Let's jump forward to the 11th century in Spain, to the very beginnings of the Spanish language. El Cid is one of the first pieces of literature in a language that we can recognize as Spanish, as what we know today as Spanish. And curiously, both of these seminal works that are presenting here today are written in verse. El Cid, one of them. So El Cid is the story of Rodrigo Díaz de Vivar, a hero who travels to defend his land and the honor of his family. Here's an image of an original text, and here's a little transcript, and you can see the original Old Spanish, which is just enough to be recognized, to be understood by today's Spanish. De los ojos tan fuertemente llorando, tornaba la cabeza, estaba los catando. And there's a translation to what it would be in modern Spanish. Here's English, and I'm going to play an actor reading an excerpt from this.
De los ojos tan fuerte mientras llorando, tornaba la cabeza y estábalos catando. Vio puertas abiertas e huzos encañados, alcándaras vacías, sin pielles e sin mantos, e sin falcones e sin actores mudados. Sospiró mi Cid, que mucho había grandes cuidados. fabló mio Cid, bien y tan mesurado. Grado a ti, Señor, Padre que estás en alto. Esto me han vuelto mios enemigos malos.
So this is an 11 verse meter, and it's one of the earliest pieces of literature in the Spanish language. So let's move forward now to Mexico. In Mexico, these stories about noblemen, usually these romances that were told in the stories of the troubadours and the jugglers in the courts, now begin to be told by the people and for the people about regular folk. And this is an important piece that Americo Paredes was noting. Americo Paredes was a folklorist who pioneered the study of corridos in the United States along the border. And one of the things he noted was this break from previous forms of narrative tragic poetry. And one of them was that now the stories were about regular people. And corridos have probably been around since the mid-19th century, and they have gone through various stages of development. They're like an old friend that has life changes, and we have to stick with them as our friends. One of the first popularizations of the corrido happened in print, and they were copies of corridos were being printed and distributed, sometimes sold by the singers of the corridos, just the way an artist would sell CDs today and play a little bit and sell them. They would sell the broadsides. I think some broadsides began to take a life of their own in the printing presses where they were being made. Some of the printers took the pen and began to compose corridos with more scholarly knowledge of poetry and incorporating. So we see some corridos that begin to be a little more sophisticated. Some corridos that may have never, I suspect, have never been sung. They were only existed in print. There were publications that would publish a corrido as part of their newspaper, add a corrido about today's current event. And we see that in the early 20th century, for sure. Songbooks were being published, before records were being sold. People would buy the lyrics and have cancioneros. Okay? And notice how long they are. I mean, today's corridos are 8 stanzas long, or 10 maybe. Look at this. If you want to sing this whole thing, this is before recording industry. They're quite long. So corridos today. Corridos are popular on the radio. They're played in different regional styles. So let's listen to some corridos that we could hear today. Alfredo Beltrán. So this is Sinaloa. We're going to hear a corrido accompanied by brass bands, which is characteristic of the folk music of Sinaloa. And this is where the state of Sinaloa is, located in Mexico. They said a lot of these instruments came through the seaport of Mazatlan by ship, and were used because of their loudness and appeal, and especially during the Revolution, they would impact. They would create an impression on people when they heard banda music. Still does today. And so this is a corrido of Alfredo Beltrán. This is one of those corridos that I would call the self-aggrandizing or vanity corridos, because they praise this man.
Saludos al Triángulo de Oro, oro para adelante mi gente, y arriba la palma va a ir aguando ya. Con una fija mirada, hombre de barba cerrada, con un acento de orden, así de hablar su plebada, caballero y buen amigo, Alfredo Beltrán se llama. Como si fueran mochomos, así lo sigue su raza, siempre los miro cargados de subida o de bajada, si calienta mucho el sol, se encuevan con todo y carga.
Okay. Now we go to the Nuevo León, el corrido de Laurita Garza. Laurita Garza was a school teacher, and this is a crime of passion. She was engaged to be married to a man, and when she discovered that he was going to marry someone else, she took him out. And we're going to hear the music here, a little different, played with a norteño lineup, accordion, bajo sexto, and string bass. Nuevo León,
A orillas del río Bravo, en una hacienda escondida, Laurita mató a su novio porque ella no la quería y con otra iba a casarse. No más porque las podía. Ay.
Okay, Laurita Garza. Now we're going to hear Mariachi playing the Corrido de los Pérez, a very popular corrido about a family feud, people, the Pérez family killing each other. And now we hear this with mariachi music from the state of Jalisco. Okay? And, let me point out on these corridos the defiance of Laurita Garza. It fits the character of the corrido. No matter what time in history, there are some constant elements to corridos. This defiance, this factual basis, this woman acting on something greater than her own, and at the end she kills herself out of shame for what she done. Mariachi, Los Pérez, where are you? Here. That's an actual photograph of the Pérez family.
En 1911 les voy a explicar muy bien. Mataron a dos hermanos y a un primo hermano también. El jueves 20 de abril, como a las 3 de la tarde, murió don Mariano Pérez en las manos de un cobarde.
This is a great corrido. We know it was 1911. Two brothers killed each other, and their first cousin as well. Then it was a Thursday, April 20th, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So there's definitely, and we see a lot of stuff in quotes. That's the defiance part, the juicy part of the corrido, where you're going to see the two forces taunting each other and challenging each other before they kill. Okay, Narco-Corridos, of course, everywhere I go, and good to see you guys. Narco-Corridos is a reemergence of the corrido form now in new bottles. The drug trade has created a lot of death, a lot of defiance of the law. It has created, a lot of outlaws and a lot of juicy material for corridos. There's a lot of money also in people commissioning corridos to champion all their going abouts and So this is one of the artists producing a corrido. That is not a guitar. This is another one with fast cars and fast guns. That one of the guns in there is gold-plated. These are the roots of the drug trade. Nuevo León, Chihuahua, Sinaloa. And those are the places where many of the corridos are being sung and written. And some corrido singers being killed over the corridos they write because they're not popular with the other side. John McDowell writes a great analysis of corridos in the state of Guerrero, and he notes that one of his informants was called himself a cobarde, the coward one, and he wanted to be very diplomatic because as he was recording the events, he wanted to be safe and stay alive and be even-handed in his portrayal of the events, because otherwise they would come looking for him. Okay, so here's a bust. This is one of the album covers with a parental advisory for explicit content, not unlike gangster rap, and an accordion and two AK guns there, the corridos and narco-corridos. Here's another one, money, guns, pura lumbre. Narco-corridos de alto calibre. Right? So, corridos are not anywhere near in the verge of disappearing right now. They are extremely popular. So I'm going to play something here, what you may hear in a narco-corrido. This is from La Raza Obrera. It's La Nieve el Polvo, powdered snow, you can imagine. And the little section in italics at the beginning is just a spoken conversation before the song begins. And it says, what's up, my man? I think this stuff is really pure. No, my friend, put away your keys. I like it in a line. Hold on, this is the good stuff. Hold on a second. All right. I have to include this.
¿Qué onda, mi gato? Se me hace que esta más es puro corte.
No, compita, guárdese las llaves. A mí me gusta de línea.
Suspire, suspire.
Compita, pura cajeta.
Suspire.
Ya tengo hechas las bolsitas, listas para repartir. Listas para repartir.
Okay, well, you get the idea. Huh? So, just a final word about the study of corridos. You know, as people have come to try to make sense of corridos, or we have the tools developed by different folklorists in studying balladry. Tristram Coffin developed, not particularly for corrido, but developed a method of analyzing ballads in Scottish balladry, which was applied to Mexican corridos by Professor Américo Paredes. And one of the analysis tools that he brings on is called the emotional core. And this is one thing that I have used a lot in very practical ways for my own teaching of corridos that I'm going to do later today, and that I do in schools, and I use with children. The emotional core, here's another, this is my professor. So John McDowell was a student of Americo Paredes. So I am like the grandchild, academic grandchild of Americo Paredes through John. So here's a emotional core analysis of a corrido. We have oral corridos that depend on people's memories, vary on different recordings. Some people will remember more verses, some people will remember less verses. So as the scholar begins to analyze and record several versions of the same corrido and they line them up side by side, they identify certain verses that repeat themselves in many versions of the song. They continue to appear. He considers those to have a special emotional core for the existence of that corrido. And there are some that only appear in certain versions that don't have as heavy of a influence on that story. So as they chart these different ones, we see in Roman numerals, the emotional core begins to emerge on certain elements that are more common in corridos. So we begin to see that many corridos have some type of introduction, a permission from the audience. May I have your permission to tell you this tragic tale? There is information about dates at the beginning, as any good storyteller would have. Then there's the warning, elements of warning our heroes that something bad may happen to them. Then our heroes defy those warnings against their best interest. And as a result of that, in Roman numeral 4, there is a tragic outcome to that defiance. So there is no rule book for corridos, but I created one based on the emotional core, and I apply it to my teaching. So I formed a very structured way of teaching corridos, and I want to end with a short video that shows some of the work I do in the schools with children, and I have written hundreds of corridos written by children. So we're going to switch the audio now.
Before you do that, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Each one of the examples you played was in a dream, like a waltz form, but it comes in.
Oh yeah. There's corridos also in a polka beat. That would be like in 4. And then if you go to Tierra Caliente, you could find in a gusto style in 6/8 tum pararam pum pan tan tan tararam tum tan tan. So they adapt themselves to the music. I also have some examples. I don't have time to play them, but the corrido that I found at the Library of Congress, that's that Cuban singer. I found 2 other corridos sung by him. They have the exact same melody. They sing the same, but he just switches subjects. All the ones I found were exactly the same. So it just goes to show corrido is a poetry form, and the music is the vehicle for delivering. So let me play this for you. And
Voy a cantarles la historia del dinero que perdí cuando yo estaba en la escuela y ni cuenta ya me di. Siempre antes del desayuno guardo.
My name is Juan Díes. I'm a member of Sones de Mexico Ensemble, and we specialize in folk music traditions from different regions of Mexico. And one of the things we do, besides performing and recording, is teaching. In fact, we are a non-profit organization for this very purpose. One of my favorite subjects to teach is the songwriting class on the Mexican ballad tradition of tragic corridos. Corridos are a type of song, but not any kind of song. They're a song that tells a story, a narrative song. But they're not any kind of Mexican tragic narrative songs. They are true Mexican tragic narrative songs. All the stories that are told in the corridos are true stories. Corridos have been in the Mexican culture for about 150 years, and they are still very popular today. I have been teaching corridos for about 15 years, and I've traveled to a few parts of the U.S. teaching this class. Whether I'm teaching children or adults, it's a subject that really captivates students. I have met many regular folks, working people, housewives, students, etc., who write their own corridos, and they either sing them themselves at home or maybe a local band will play them. People in those communities like to hear the events in their communities, even the tragic ones, memorialized, so they can relive them and feel that catharsis.
Al comer tanto pozole, su peso no más subía.
I teach corridos in a very structured way. These structured stories are also helpful for students to learn how to organize their thoughts. Just like a 5-paragraph essay, the corrido will take you through a structure in telling a story.
Permiso. Because it is a tragic story and is going to involve something sad, in respect for your audience, you ask for permission. Voy a cantar un corrido del amigo Oscar Durán, 25 de diciembre, cuando murió en Michoacán.
I also teach about the 8-syllable verse that is very common to corridos.
Versos que le compusieron. Versos que le compusieron. Cuando se murió mi padre.
And we listen to recordings of corridos, old and new, so that students can see that what I'm teaching really applies to the practice. We also do rhyming exercises. We learn about rhyme patterns, A, B, C, B, A, B, A, B, or A, B, C, B, D, B, etc. At one point, students have to come up with a tragic story, which can range from losing your lunch money to losing a relative.
I want you to start thinking about what events your corridos will be about. You have to choose some tragic event that you have experienced or that you know that is true. Who has a tragedy that wants to share right now? What happened?
Research is an important part of writing corridos. With reporting comes responsibility, and corridos have to get the facts right. Sometimes students have to interview family members or look up something in the library.
It happened in West Chicago, something I want you to know. 2 children died in a fire, they had nowhere else to go.
The corrido songwriting class covers many skill sets, storytelling, poetry, music, history, research, news reporting. It deals with a tragedy, including a death, or expressing your experiences through poetry and song.
Wanted to keep them safe, but fear's what kept them apart.
I teach corridos mostly in Spanish, but then I figured if you can do Japanese haikus in English, why can't you do corridos in English too? Creativity is an interesting exercise because there really isn't a right or a wrong answer. We do some exercises to loosen up students' creativity. I use cartoons and drawing comics as a way for students to storyboard their ideas into corridos. Drawing corridos is very much a part of the tradition. The prints of José Guadalupe Posada in the early 20th century are very much a part of the corrido tradition. I have worked with artists who can teach students the process and integrate it into my corrido class. I always help students with their corridos. I may help them with a couple of lines if they're stuck, or if there isn't enough time in class to finish the exercise. It is very important to me that students walk away with a finished corrido in their hands. Sometimes we do a culminating performance for the community.
The tragedies that are told by the kids, some of them are small tragedies. We have other ones that involve difficult stories or hard stories. I want you to know that we always try to do this with a lot of respect and always remembering that corridos are a way to honor the people that we're writing about.
For longer programs, sometimes we give students a CD of their corrido to show their family and friends, and a certificate to emphasize the sense of accomplishment and stress to the teachers and parents the academic value of having written a corrido. With an emphasis on literacy, both in English and in Spanish, and with a subject matter that is engaging and touches on many skill sets, corridos have worked really well as one of the programs we offered with Sones de Mexico Ensemble.
Abril 10 del 19, una tragedia muy triste. Fue el día que murió Zapata, no se rían que no es un chiste. Todos querían a Zapata, que los pobres ayudaba. Cuando había muchos ladrones, la libertad él les daba.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We may have time for a couple questions. I know we have a break before we begin the workshop. So, yes. I'm sure there was some of that going on. The challenge of that theory is that they continue to be sung today, so they're no longer news. They're just celebrations of La Valentina, Adelita, or all those Valente Quintero or Benjamin Argumedo, all those heroes of the revolution that so many people don't know from history books. They know them because there was a corrido written about them. Yeah. Yes.
I wondered if you could talk a little bit about improvisation versus writing, or corridos, are they written down?
I think they're written. I think they're written. They're composed and memorized. I think individual performers may have their own repertoire, may incorporate add certain elements, but there isn't an improvisational quality as there is in music from Veracruz or from in Décimas from other places. This is a composed piece, and singers will attempt to memorize as much as they can. The oral ones that haven't been written are more interesting because they present more variations. But I would see them more as mutations of the corrido rather than improvised.
For historical corridos, is there a sense of there's an author or a songwriter, or do you
Well, many of them are in the public domain, but the modern ones, yes. I mean, they're all probably copyrighted. There's also fictional ones. They're, Contrabando y Traición, that some people know as Camelia la Tejana, is known that it was made up. It was written as a interesting story. The Corrido del Caballo Blanco is very popular by Jose Alfredo Jimenez, is fictional. But they're out there in the corrido form.
Something tragic, but it's thanking a saint or thanking the Virgin for, you know, a tragic illness or some tragedy that happened to you, but in the end you're saint.
Yes. Well, I think they share the same culture, the Mexican. There are maybe different outlets for the same culture, but I don't know if they're related in that sense. They will give us a good source of inspiration for corridos. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We're going to take a short break.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.